Hello and welcome to Live at 7. It is Thursday, October 23. Thanks for joining us on CVM TV and around the globe online at cvmtv.com. I'm Simon Crosskill. This evening we focus on the youth, harnessing their talents, giving them more opportunities. How? Well, at least one person who is responsible. How will we deal with that? What plan does she have? Well, she's here to tell us all about it. The Minister of Youth and Culture, Hanna, will be joining us in just a moment. And you can join in the discussion. You can chat with us on Facebook. We're live at 7, CVM TV, or send, what you call it again? A tweet. Hashtag this evening is youth. Before all of that, though, let's talk about what's happening now. Well, what's happening now is the Portia Simpson-Miller government says it is hunting for answers to unlock economic growth in the country. Finance Minister Dr. Peter Phillips told a gathering of high-ranking International Monetary Fund and Caribbean officials in Montego Bay that the stakeholders in the private enterprise could very well have the answer to crank up the economy.
We here in Jamaica have come this far, and we have been looking for the key to unlocking even more growth than we have experienced in the last 4 quarters. With the limitations all regional governments face, it is important that we continue to encourage the private sector to look at the opportunities that exist.
Meanwhile, the government continued to receive praise from the International Monetary Fund over how it has so far been navigating the 4-year borrowing deal with the fund. Meanwhile, there is still shock and tension at this hour in the East Kingston community of Rockfort after the multiple shooting last evening. Police and Jamaica Defence Force soldiers have blanketed the area since 3 people were killed and 6 others injured in 2 separate incidents merely minutes apart.
At about 7:15 p.m. yesterday evening, armed men went to 8 St. John's Road in the Rockfort area, where a group of patrons were at a bar. They opened fire, hitting 7 persons. They were rushed to the Kingston Public Hospital, where 3 of the 7 succumbed to their injuries. As a reprisal for that shooting at 8 St. John's Road, armed men went to 12.5 Hildene Avenue in the state of Rockfort here, where a group of persons were. They fired shot at them, hitting 2. They were taken to the Kingston Public Hospital, where they are being treated.
There were fears from residents that this incident could spawn fresh hostilities in the area, with some warning that more reprisals could follow. More on those stories and others in Newswatch at 8 o'clock. Now then, there are these often bandied about phrases. The children are the future and today's youth are tomorrow's leaders. But how seriously do we take these statements? Take the statistics in Jamaica. Youth unemployment, that is young people between the ages of 14 and 24, currently stands at 33.6%. The 2012 UNDP Caribbean Human Development Report said that youth crime was costing Jamaica $46.5 billion per year. This is calculated based on direct expenditure to fight crime and potential revenue which stays away from Jamaica because of said criminals. Now, it's estimated that because of youth crime, Jamaica loses $4.3 million in potential investment each year, where a further $95 million, which could have flowed into Jamaica through tourism, goes elsewhere. The UNDP report estimates that youth crime in Jamaica is costing the country as much as 3.21% of its gross domestic product. Now, if you doubted before that everything is connected, right there, youth crime is a clear example. But on the hotspot tonight is the Youth Minister, Hanna, who has a plan on what to do about providing opportunities for our youngsters. Thanks for joining us, Minister. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Our invitation was predicated on what I must say, it seems a rather unusual thing for a minister to do, which is to write an article
Yes.
in the Gleaner, outlining your thought process on where you want to take your ministry, given the demands of modern society.
Where we have been taking
Where you
and
have
the path
been
that
taking
it's
it.
been on.
You stress that we become way more tech savvy. If somebody doesn't have a computer, they've got a phone, they're texting, they're messaging, they're doing all sorts of things with technology that is at their fingertips, almost right across the spectrum in Jamaica. And as a result, if I'm to gather from the article, you see a need for a retraining of our youngsters and a redirecting of maybe their career aspirations. Am I right?
You're correct. Well, what spawned me to write the article is based on the work that we've been doing in the Ministry of Youth and Culture. And one of the things when I became minister 2 years ago was we had to do 3 things mainly. One, we had to restructure the ministry to have a multidisciplinary approach to youth training and to how we allocated resources, because at the time, we have the NCYD now under the ministry. We also have the National Youth Service, which is under the ministry. We have the JCDC, the CDA, which is the Child Development Agency, and the OCR, and they cross over. And they deal with youth in different sectors and different communities, for instance, and at different levels, at risk, unattached, and those who are trained. So we really had to look at how we were allocating resources. So for example, the NYS, 90% of their budget went to programs, where 10% went to staff. And then the NCYD was the other way around. They were spending 90% on paying staff and 10% on programs. So we said we're going to push a lot of the programs through the NYS. So this year we're spending $322 million on programs, and 8 of them are new programs targeted at graduate students for entrepreneurship, for persons with disabilities, and really focusing the NCYD on policy and running our youth information centers. The other thing that we were able to do is bring the CDA in and the JCDC in. So it's a real multidisciplinary approach. Then we started to look at the trends and the global trends, and within the context of being under the IMF and realizing that our young people and their parents needed to shift their paradigm in what their traditional career goals were. So what I said in the article was the top 10 in-demand jobs in 2013 didn't exist in 2003. So it was now saying to them, look, the traditional things that you might have dreamt about, you now have to rethink and retool. And then Jamaica is not exclusive to having youth unemployment. The world is experiencing the highest crisis it has been in youth unemployment. Because the global economy is what is now pushing it, and the technology. This year, we're going to produce more information than we have in the past 5,000 years. And when you take, I think all of us take for granted, when I was studying at university, they were just looking at fiber optic cables. Now they're testing 3rd generation fiber optic cables where 10 trillion bits of information can run down one strand. So our young people are getting a lot of information, and it makes it difficult for us as leaders because we have to keep up with it. The third thing that we've done is we are restructuring the ministry and putting more technical competence in there to deal with youth and looking at the policy. So the policy is now before Cabinet, and that policy has taken, the revised policy has taken a while to come. And it has gone through the consultations. It went to Cabinet as a green paper. Cabinet asked for some other things to be done, and I agree, because it has always been largely academic. And what our youth need right now are programs that can provide them with opportunities.
Help me out in that, because we had the Minister of Education, Ronald Thwaites, on this program, and he was suggesting something along those lines. He wanted a greater emphasis on mathematics and on technology, because he said there's no point, we may not really need any more lawyers. Lord knows we don't need any more lawyers, and it may not be that we need to have more doctors and so on, but we may need more people who can service a fiber optic line and so on.
Well, when we were looking at doing the MOUs, because it was clear to me, so our chairman for NYS, which is Maureen Webb, and our deputy chairman is James Masalomon, coming with vast experience. And when we looked at the sector, and we looked at how we were going to allocate the resources, we realized that the CMI, for instance, their uptake in jobs are 9 out of 10 because people want more persons who are technically inclined and have a technical vocation. And when you look across the board, agriculture has our greatest competitive advantage.
Right.
Culture, they need musicians, they need persons in animation. Certainly the technical degree. A student going in to study a technical degree now, half of what they study in their first year is obsolete by their third year. And so you realize the doubling of the kind of technology that we're talking about. So when my young people ask me if I have a Samsung or an iPhone and how the trends keep moving, there's a disconnect between how fast the things are coming out and how the global economy is working. Everything is moving very quickly. So even in China, 25% of children with the highest IQ in China is larger than the total population in America. In India, it's 28%. India has more children on the honor roll than America has children. So our Jamaican youth are now competing in a global economy. They're competing with the rest of the world. And what they need to realize is that every time they press send, it can open an opportunity. So we have trained since 2012 with that multidisciplinary approach in areas in entrepreneurship, with the graduate work employment program, with young people at risk. In other service areas, we've trained 40,000 young people. We've been able to place about close to 16,000 of them in jobs. And that is only my ministry. What has to happen, though, which is why we are now moving in this direction, we meet with our youth leaders and we say to them, look, you have to be able to go out there and say to these young people the traditional way and the job for life no longer exists.
I wondered if this was predicated on youth leaders who seem to have strong criticisms recently or a little while back, suggesting that you don't seem to be defending a policy position that has their interest in heart.
When was that one? Because I remember there was...
This was a little while back.
Yeah.
I don't have an actual date.
I think that's when I just started as minister, and I think one of the things that they actually said...
They'd given you a sort of a failing grade in this regard.
And that was interesting because it was the day before I presented my sectoral debate. And it was at the time when I'd just become minister and we were dealing with Jamaica 50. And funnily enough, when I became minister in 2012, I took up the mantle of dealing with the revised youth policy. Some work had been done on it before, but quite a bit of work had not been completed, which had to be completed. So, I mean, I actually take criticism well, and we have come a far way since 2012.
So those leaders would see a difference in what you're doing now?
I met those leaders again. And I met with 50 of them nationally, and I meet with them at least 3 times a year. And we present what we're going and the direction that we're going in, and we ask for their advice and we ask for their consultation. And so nothing that I do does not involve the youth leaders, both at the high school level, at the university level, certainly at the National Youth Council level, and in the youth groups around the island.
You mentioned, music. We are well known for our music. It is a brand. But you don't only need musicians and singers. You need technical people, you need arrangers, composers, you name it. And yet, recently, you were criticized fairly strongly by Chronix, the entertainer. In fact, I think you had a back and forth. In your response, you said you are open to conversation with the entertainment community to ensure the best outcome. Have these conversations taken place in that kind of sphere that you mentioned, that you want to create opportunities for young people within this industry? Because he was saying that you guys don't seem to care about the industry.
I saw that, and one of the things, big up to Chronix first of all, because it's somebody that I like, and I listen to his music, and I like his music. The issue, though, is that we are dealing with 4 different generations operating within a structure. So you have people like yourself, who they call the traditionalist, who says, write me a letter. You have the baby boomers who say, call me. You have certainly my generation who says email me, and then you have my son's generation who says text me.
Right.
I serve the text me generation, and so a lot of the times I don't use traditional media to communicate. A lot of the times I'm communicating via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or Snapchat. I haven't even been able to understand Snapchat yet.
You've
That one I
gotten
can't
there
manage.
where I don't know anything about Snapchat.
And so when things come up, sometimes I put myself in the position to answer. And what I was saying to Chronix was, look, let us have dialogue about it. There are things that are happening. Don't use your brand, because it's the easiest thing to do to blame a government or a politician. And have some temperance, and don't squander your brand, because you too are brand Jamaica, and people listen to you. Right now, music transcends so many divides, and I would hate to see him go down that road. So it wasn't, I think the press always pitches it as a back and forth. I communicate in this medium all the time, and not because I'm minister means that I don't. And then you have the traditionalist who says, well, you shouldn't talk to him because you should have sent somebody to talk to him. No, that's not how I am. These are young people that I serve.
Are there not inherent dangers, though, in I guess, that type of conversation? Can it not be sort of never-ending, and it's all played out
Not
there,
really.
or do you just
Not
stop
really.
at a point?
You can stop at a point. I think the last, when it ended was when somebody said, boy, you and the minister in war, and he said, look, she was very respectful, and we had a conversation. And it really was a conversation, just in the same way that I have conversations with other people, but he has a household name, and he's an international superstar. So in this, and what is of note, one of the ways that we've also pushed it is last year we had about 46,000 young people registered on our online website where they can post resumes and look for jobs, etc., and we talk to them. This year, we've moved that number to 116,000. So we're growing in terms of our reach to our young people, because young people are not in this space. They're not in a paper space. They're in a virtual space.
Right.
And that is where I do most of my talking to them.
I mean, moving it from 40 to 100 and change could also just mean that there are more people out there now who are looking for work.
Or that they are aware of some of the things that we're doing. But I take your point as well. Yeah.
But the other issue would be, talking up the music industry to say, listen, this can be a career, and this is a respectable career.
Absolutely.
And I think people have spoken about it, where you can go and get a bank loan in order to produce an album,
right
and so on.
If you speak to Edna Manley has a difficulty keeping their musicians in school. And so even when we started the training, one of the things that we started in the ministry with the cultural training of youth is we got Jeria to come in, because there are about 2,000 ska bands around the world. And Jamaica is the heart of ska. We're a ska country, and everywhere people love this music. And we got Jeria to test it and to go into the rural areas and train what is called duppy bands. You know what a duppy band is? Okay. To play other genres of music, including ska.
Right.
And we showcase the best bands during festival. This is now going to be a sustainable program of the ministry, going out, training these bands so that they can perform at other areas and also go overseas and perform.
All right. I don't want to spend the whole time on the music business, but does it also...
And I know the Ministry of, remember, the Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment has several programs that they have in place.
All right.
So they really deal with a lot of the entertainers
but do we need a physical infrastructure for these youngsters to, say, produce an album that's cheaper than studio time, which is better?
We do. And one of the things that certainly we did this year is put a division in the JCDC. Because a lot of times, a lot of the young people come and say, boy, Minister, we want to cut a tune, and we have this talent, but we don't have anybody to market it.
Right.
And when I looked at the Cuban model is fascinating, because their JCDC also has a marketing arm. So if you want a cultural person and you come to the country, you go to their JCDC and you can find the database, you can find the artists, you charge them a fee, etc. And you also provide them with the opportunity to harness that talent. So we got from the Ministry of Finance no approval, so that unit is being set up at the JCDC.
All right, we're talking to the Minister of Youth and Culture, Lisa Hanna, and we'll continue doing that on Live at 7 on the other side of this break. Hi, welcome back to Live at 7. Do something for the youth now is a common cry in Jamaica. Well, in the studio tonight is the Minister of Youth and Culture, Lisa Hanna, the lady whose mandate is to do just that. So you've outlined the area of a shift in programs, in training to better take advantage of what's happening in...
Not only locally, but globally.
Right. You mentioned agriculture as well. Well, how's that working out for you? Because if I'm not that way inclined, how are you going to say, you know, listen, you could, because you also in the article touched on the fact that a lot of our youngsters seem to be risk averse, not willing to take advantage of monies that are out there to start a small business or so on. But how do you remedy that? Because if we're not that way inclined as a people, where this group of people is, how are you going to appeal to those people to get into agriculture or to get into another form of their own business?
Well, it's a two-edged sword, because we've trained our young people, and when I speak to them, it's go to school, get good exams, go to university,
right,
get a job, settle down, have children. Make sure you go to church too, in most situations. So a lot of them have been put in this mindset from they were so high. Some have been completely unsupervised, and then we have to deal with those as well. But we have to change that entire way of thinking, because the job for life has become rarer and rarer now.
Right.
So what happens is, when you ask a university graduate or someone who's in university, when you leave university, will you be looking for a job or will you be creating a job? 99% of the persons who are in the graduating class, when I ask them, put their hands up, that they are be looking for a job. Now, there are not many who want to create a job because they're just they've never been retooled that way. So through the NYS, we now have what is called Entrepreneurship 101, where we're targeting about 1,500 young people as a start to put them through entrepreneurship training.
When you say young people, are you talking about university graduates?
17 to 24. One of the things
have they gone to university, or is it people that aren't in the tertiary education system?
Some who are not in tertiary. The other thing that we're putting in the revised policy is to extend the age of how we deal with youth to 29. Because we realize that the traditional age is really 15 to 25, but you still have that 5-year where those persons also need help in terms of policy and the like. So those persons that we're targeting don't necessarily have to be university graduates. We have another program for them, which is a graduate work employment program for those students who have a tertiary degree and can't get a job because they don't have experience. Because the ratio of young people being employed to adults is 2 to 7. Young people are 3 times more likely to be unemployed to an adult. Or put another way, adults are 3 times more likely to be employed than a young person. So it's really saying to them, look, you can go in this area, but back to farming. Many of them don't want to be farmers. Many of them, when you say, well, why don't you go into farming? And that's why we've signed the MOU with CASE, because we're now giving scholarships to young people to go and study agriculture and to also study at CMI and to also study ICT at various community colleges.
Does it not need, though, support from the ministry, the agriculture ministry, in terms of subsidies, incentives,
well, that's what the policy is going to also address. That's what is before Cabinet. And in dealing with and looking at the landscape, all of those things will have to be in there. Because when I speak to our youth leaders and even young people, it's having access to land, it's having access to grant funding, it's being able to go to a bank and say, look, I really have no collateral, but I need to get a loan. So we have had to fast track a lot of things, and within the IMF agreement, some of the things are difficult to achieve in terms of some of the legislation that is critical. And that's why a lot of the programs that we've rolled them out even before the policy. So people who have said, well, where is the policy? If you know sometimes how a policy comes into being, if I was waiting on this policy to come into being, these young people would have been waiting for another couple of months or even a couple of years. We have to get programs out before we can even look at some other things.
All right, a part of your, I want to shift now because a part of your other responsibility is children in homes, and there's been a lot of headlines about that recently. In fact, up to this week, we had information that the visits you make to children's homes are infrequent. Staff at some of the homes we spoke to were concerned about how you would address the issue of our children's homes in this country. It is felt that that you're not tapped into it because you don't, I don't know, visit as often as maybe they would like.
Who said that? That's not true, first of all. And one of the things that we've been able to do very actively is deal with the children's homes. Remember that there are two different types of children's homes that we manage. Well, three. We manage the government-run children's homes. We give subsidies to the privately run children's homes, which is about 42, and we have places of safety for children who are in need of care and protection. And one of the things that we've been able to do successfully is we've been able to not only increase small our subvention to private children's homes, many of them are clamoring for more.
But the question is, do you give that money but then not, and I'd say visit, not, I don't mean you being at the children's homes yourself personally, but to see that the money is spent properly.
And I visit, absolutely. And what we've been able to do is we've realigned our regulations. We have reviewed and completed the review of the Child Care and Protection Act. We now have a model children's home going in place at Maxfield Park Children's Homes, where young people know new buildings, new dormitories, where young people will be able to do extracurricular activities and the like. We have put in the Board of Visitors, which was not there before. We have also been able to realign the CDA to look at parenting. So we've trained over 1,500 parents, because the simple question I asked myself when I became minister is, if something or my entire family was to be wiped out, would I feel comfortable with the state taking care of my child? And until I'm able to answer that question affirmatively, then I will continue to work hard.
I've got to take a break, but I want to know if you're ready to answer that affirmatively when we come back on Live at 7. All right, welcome back to Live at 7. Still with us is Lisa Hanna, Minister of Youth and Culture. And
should go exit left.
I've always wanted to say Minister of Youth, Sport and Culture, because I think that's how it used to be. So, before the break, I was asked, you were saying...
Yes. I was talking about children.
If some calamity happened, you know, before, would you have been happy with putting your child into one of these homes? Now...
No, I am. There are one or two that I'd be very comfortable with my son being there.
How can you get it to more than that?
Well, what we've been able to do, remember, you know, the CDA came to the ministry at the time in October 2011, before the CDA was at Health. And it really wasn't, it's an executive agency, so you really have, it was doing what it ought to do. What has happened now is, once it came and I became minister, one of the things that I noticed is that there was very little supervision at the ministerial level of the CDA. So there was a lot of gaps in the system, both in terms of management and in terms of really how information and communication for programs was being monitored. So we had to fix those gaps. We spend $1.7 billion a year on our children's homes and places of safety. So even the private homes get an allocation through subventions of about $500 million. So really what it is management. So what happened was, I was the sole arbiter of managing this child development agency, which was really ridiculous because of the executive type agency that it was. So brought on Sadie Keating, author of the Keating Report, to assist. And it was really the two of us in the ministry managing. So I had to be able to restructure it and say to finance, look, we need a children's division in the ministry that looks at the policies, the programs, that monitors and makes sure we're catching the glitches. That is now in place. We now have a director of the children's division with the staff looking at this. Have all the things been fixed? No.
And in monitor, do you mean, because one of my concerns would be if you're handing out any amount of money to organizations to run anything to do with children, that breaches aren't taking place in the individual home. So
Precisely.
are there enough monitors
yeah, we've actually, one of the things that we've done is re-looked at the regulations. And for homes now to apply, especially the private ones, because you remember the private ones have to reapply for licenses.
Right, right.
There is a template and a checklist that the CDA looks at to renew those licenses. So it was not a rubber stamp where I was concerned. They had to go in to check them, make sure that they were okay. And I visit quite a few of them.
We had done a program, and we had found that some were operating without licenses which hadn't been renewed. Not to say that they wouldn't have, but the process was, say, it was due 6 months ago.
When was that?
I don't know, last year. But not so much that the home
would not have been granted.
Right, would not have been granted
in the process of renewing
but the process
licenses.
was slow.
As I said to you, we've had to really go in, and the CDA has a wonderful staff. What I think also needs to happen within some of our children's homes is a retooling of staff, because their institutional indifference in any organization will set in, especially if you keep seeing the same things over and over, and if you have a hands-off approach, because a lot of the, especially in the girls' homes, a lot of the girls know how to manipulate the staff, and you can't touch them physically, because the girls will cry foul in some instances, and some of the boys. So even if you hold them to pull them back if they're doing something or going outside and they're not supposed to. So it's a very, very difficult job, and I sympathize with a lot of our staff, but at the same time, we have to hold everybody accountable, especially where funds are concerned.
There's been an increase in the demand by parents, which I guess suggests that we have some other societal issues to deal with, by parents on the state to deal with unruly children. 10,745 this year between January and June, compared to 13,939
Where are you
in the
getting
last
those
3
statistics
years.
from? Is that the OCR?
Yeah, that was from the Gleaner newspaper.
Okay, because one of the things is neglect is our largest form of abuse. So what I'd love to know if those are statistics about care and protection, neglect, or those are for parents who say, look, I can't control the child.
No, these are the ones who are saying, my child is too unruly,
right.
I can't deal with it.
Which is why I say, in situations like that, they take them, in many instances, to the CDA or to the police stations, and then ask a judge to give a supervision order to incarcerate the child. So what we did, because it was against international law and certainly our own laws, to incarcerate a child for unruly behavior, which was what was happening down by Fort Augusta.
Right.
And that's when we separate the girls from the adults. And that was what was happening in other institutions. And so we got Cabinet to remove the label of uncontrollable child. And we got a lot of the girls out of South Camp Road on that basis. It really has to do with parenting, and that's one of the reasons why we put a policy for the CDA to also have parenting seminars, because even when those girls or boys come out, they have to go back to the same home. We had a situation where a young lady ran away from one of our places of safety back to her mother, and the mother brought her straight back and said she didn't want the police to lock her up. It's a very, very unfortunate situation. You have girls in there who have parents who don't need to be in the system. When we call the parents, I've spoken to one or two, they don't come back for the girls. And these girls have been growing up in state care from their babies until they're 16. It's not that they don't have families. Some of their families just don't want the responsibility of a child. And so when a child, I as a parent wonder sometimes, how is it that you can take your child to a police station and say, look, I can't control the child? Where does that come from? And when I got chastised for saying, okay, we're going to need a police station per parish to deal with children, whether they go missing, whether a parent takes them in, whether they are suspected of murder, I was raked against the knuckles because I was thought to be locking up children. No. What was happening is that parents were taking in the children and they were being kept in the same environments with the adults. Now what we have are units. We've started with 4. where they now have homework facilities. They have proper airy bedrooms, too, with bunks, etc. They have a play area, and then they have an isolation pad for when a child is brought in, whether for care and protection or going missing, for that child to be housed. So there are several problems, and as a Minister of Youth and Culture, I've seen it firsthand in working with the staff of the CDA and going into the homes and speaking to the children, especially those at the juvenile detention centers, because those are under the Ministry of National Security. And these girls are angry. The boys are angry. And a lot of them need counseling. So, because of that, we wrote to JSIF, and we now have $60 million, because that uncontrollable behavior you're talking about doesn't need incarceration, it needs therapy. So we're breaking ground for a therapeutic center where they can get the counseling. We have a mobile therapeutic center now, which we tested in this region, with a psychologist, a psychiatrist, etc. And they go to the children's homes and the places of safety and monitor those young people. But what we need is a facility, which we're going to be breaking ground for this year, where they have the control, they have the counseling, if they need medication, they're given the medication, and not incarceration.
So these wouldn't be, I mean, those places would be for children that it is determined have an issue.
Need and an issue. Because some of those children, they might have ADD, schizophrenia, they might be bipolar, some of them just need supervision. But a lot of our Jamaican parents also don't want to deal with the mental issues of the children. Them just unruly and them bad, and we can't control them. And sometimes it's a larger issue that you need to be involved in. And so we're putting that in place as well. And that should happen, I wouldn't say we'll break ground this year, but certainly early next year.
You know, something that is important to me, which is a part of your ministry, is heritage. And occasionally we do programs on that. And we did one, I don't know, maybe a couple of months ago on heritage. How do you plan to ensure that the Heritage Trust is equipped to restore some of our properties, a lot of our properties, monitor our heritage sites? We were told point blank by the Heritage Trust that they simply do not have enforcement officers.
And it's true.
And so, how do they enforce anything?
Well,
you almost have to rely
on a very short staff, and I really want to big up the JNHT and our archaeologists.
Is it that we're not taking it seriously?
It's not that we're not taking it seriously at the policy level, but it's difficult also to increase the size of the public sector where we are now. But we are taking it seriously. We know for the first time are on the World Heritage Committee, which I lobbied for at UNESCO, and we have a seat as one of the 21 countries. And right now the Blue and Jonkro Mountains are being evaluated. And we want a World Heritage Site. And we're pushing. We've built 3 new museums. We're building another 2. And those are things that we can be proud of.
But we have some great sites.
Yeah,
that
but remember, you know, Simon, as well, one of the things that a lot of the countries that have museums and the like, New York as a country, and certainly Manhattan as a city, and if you go to Toronto and you go to Berlin, a lot of these things have to do with philanthropy. A lot of the old, wealthy people leave their estates to take care of culture.
There's a greater budgetary spend on it to begin with.
So to be fair,
and I get your point about the IMF.
To be fair, the IOJ, no, we have more exhibitions at the National Library. The IOJ is vibrant. We're having more discussions, but it's also for the public to come out, because we have these 3 new museums, state of the art.
But we have houses, we have Port Royal, we have areas that, whilst you may expand your public sector, these can be money earners for tourism
TEF is spending $100 million right now in Port Royal to upgrade Port Royal as a heritage tourist site. And so there are things that are happening in heritage, and what we also have to do is sensitize our country. When I see young people as well walking and kicking statues in front of the National Gallery, and so we have to teach our young people the benefits. So the culture card, which we've implemented and we're rolling out, is a card coming out of the Ministry of Youth and Culture, which we've given to students to attend museums free under the ministry, cultural events and other heritage sites
You're
free of
dodging
cost.
my thing about the site, so
No, 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 I'm
you're,
not.
you're focusing on
But I said,
what we
but I answered, no, Simon,
what we
to be
loosely
fair.
call museums. But I've
No,
got to take a break. I'll come back and give you the
Okay.
point to answer. All right, we'll come back on Live at 7 in just a minute. All right, welcome back to Live at 7. We're talking to Lisa Hanna, Minister of Youth and Culture. Before the break, I was saying to you, right, the new museums are great, but we've got Folly and we've got this and we've got other places.
We have a lot. And what happens is that when budgets are being crafted, especially now...
Heritage isn't at the top of the pile.
Perhaps not. And that is not because we haven't asked for the budget, but the priorities that are there, and so what they give us what is necessary for the salaries and for other programs, and we get a lot of grant funding. So what we have done is through TEF, and TEF has been very, very helpful, and Chase and others, we have now gotten funds to be able to do some of the work that you're speaking about, but for it to come from the Consult Fund. And we're asking those people who want to make contributions to please, if you can, the same philanthropy that we're talking about.
I guess the same issue, it's along the same lines. The birthplace of Marcus Garvey and what's happening there, that seems to be in the back of my mind as a news story for a while.
I answered those questions in Parliament on Tuesday, and it's a very simple answer. When I became minister in January of 2012, I received letters from lawyers representing the persons living at the Marcus Garvey birthplace,
right.
Saying that they understand that there was going to be compulsory acquisition because the government before Cabinet had made a decision to compulsory acquire the place because Chase was giving funds to restore the place. And they broke ground in October 2011. So fast forward to me becoming minister. And what was said in the correspondence by the lawyers is, look, these people they're really the owners of the place because the families of the Garveys gave the place to the people. And I said, well, let them produce a documentation because for us to go and buy the place, if it belongs to them, and I don't need to go into that explanation, it went back and forth to the point where the lawyer said, look, we can't come up with a documentation. It really is a Crown. We found that the Crown owns the land. And so where we are now is we're going to compulsory acquire the place. The lawyers pulled out. Subsequently, in September, another lawyer came back in and find a means and mechanism for peaceful relocation so that we can restore the place. But generally, it was, and I did not want to, if someone says that the Garveys gave them the place, I must be able to give them the opportunity to come up with that documentation.
This has a kind of feel about it like Pinnacle.
How?
The similarity of identity.
When Bobby comes on, you can ask Bobby about that.
Why, that will be a cold day in hell. I can't get him on at all. But anyway, all right. I know that's shifted. Let me talk to my my correspondence on Facebook, because we did ask the question: does Jamaica provide enough
That's
tools?
in real time, or since I've been on the program?
Earlier on.
Oh, come on, man, what that do?
For youth to become successful in whichever field they choose. These are some of the responses. Charlene says, absolutely not. That's why they're all migrating. Tanisha says, no, higher education, which is the only tool to excel, is too costly for the masses, so most settle for survival jobs instead of the field they are passionate about. O'Neill says, no, I don't think so. More tools that need to be implemented for the youth to excel. Kerry says, no, too much classism, tribalism, and unfair distribution of wealth. And Fatima says, definitely not enough. However, the issues we face as youths, the reason why we face such issues derive from poor policy, separate and apart from the fact that many of our schools lack resources. There is a great need for more specialized teachers in these institutions so as to minimize the high turnout of delinquent youth. All right, let me hear what you had to say on the streets.
No, they know provide enough tools for the to successful in whatever field they choose.
No, no feel at all. Jamaican had nothing to help you with them go through future.
No, I don't think so, because for instance, if they did provide enough tool, we wouldn't have so much children on the road.
No, I don't think so. The government need to do better. They need to look out for the youths, them like all America, England, and everybody else look out for them youths. They need more upliftment. Them not do what them for do.
And I wonder if that is what you started out by saying, that the mindset is go to school, go to university, come out, be a doctor,
Exactly. If you listen, one of the things that should have been asked is what field and what tools are you speaking about? Is it that your child had a dream of becoming a doctor, a lawyer, a historian? Because if that was what it was, then the expectation of having a job right away is going to be very, very difficult. Versus, well, the government needs to now start preparing our youth for jobs that will exist, which is the direction that the Ministry of Youth is going in.
Right.
And the young woman with the fabulous bleached hair was making the comparison that around the world, everybody's doing something for young people. Right now, the statistics, youth unemployment is a global problem. And the unemployment rates for youth are coming down. It was 33.6% in April of this year by Statin, compared to 38.9% last year for the same period. And we want to bring it even further down as the trend continues.
All right.
But I appreciate the comments.
I had an issue with our gala celebrations, whereas we could probably have used the money before elsewhere. People are still questioning about our 50th celebrations and whether everybody's been paid and do we have the figures,
where's the camera that I can look into? This one?
Yeah,
everyone for Jamaica 50 has been paid. We owe no money for Jamaica 50th celebrations. Thank you. On to what you were asking.
That kind of looked good. All right. Gala, do we get figures back to say what we spent, what it cost,
Absolutely.
who got what? Did one set of people get more money than another set of people? Did we overuse
no, we went in with
technicians? Did
we went in with very credible budgets. And one of the things, and I would appreciate the commentary, certainly you can write to me via Facebook or otherwise, to tell me what alternative or what alternate activity for independent celebrations do you think would be a better use of money? Because it's one thing to say, well, don't use the money. That's way too much money. But if you're putting that kind of thing on with 2,500 people performing, you're not only giving costume designers work, you're giving young people the opportunity to be trained in this particular area. You're putting on a full-on stage production, as you would in a reggae sunsplash or something.
Some people have said, why not do it every 5 years? Why every single year? Why spend that money?
Well,
that's over 5 years, that's $250 million. That could have built a hospital probably in Portmore that I've been hearing about for the last 15 years. That sort of thing.
But I hear that. And I'm open to suggestions, and the government is open to suggestions. However, tell me how we should celebrate our independence, which to me and to several others is so crucial to our democracy.
It is. I think with, again, a greater
because remember,
defense of our heritage sites,
the Jamaica
a greater
50,
emphasis
I
of our
heard a lot
culture.
of people banding about that the cost for Gala, the 57 million, was a lot. And it is a lot in real terms. But if you look at the type of production that goes into making a Gala, in terms of security.
I don't doubt it.
Right.
The question is whether to have that gala and use 57 million to, there are other spends.
I hear that.
I've got to get to the serious business, which is really why we asked you here today, in that surely Portia Simpson-Miller is not going to be the head of the party forever. Are you likely to be the next leader of the PNP? And
that's really why you asked me to come here?
That's what we wanted to know.
So you couldn't ask me that from before?
I could have done it by phone, but I wanted to know if you see yourself as Prime Minister anytime soon, or when
No,
Portia
there's no
Simpson-Miller.
vacancy there. And I'm somebody, I think you know this a little bit about me. I do my work. And until there is a possibility, then you can call me back. But until then, I love my Prime Minister. She's someone that I seek a lot of advice from, and someone that has really taken for the last 40 years a strong person to be there. So when she's ready, I will also go to her and seek her advice.
That sounds like almost a small campaign speech. Thanks to Lisa Hanna, who is the Minister of Youth and Culture.
Thanks, Simon.
You know, I'm all for forgiving people when they make a mistake. I get a little less forgiving when the same people make another mistake. And when the same people make a third mistake, well, it means we have a systemic problem. That usually means that the people in charge may have to go and allow a new set of people who are not so prone to mistakes. Now, take the Southern Regional Health Authority. Remember the man and the youngster? Both of them died at the Spanish Town Hospital waiting for treatment. Remember the stroke patient who died waiting for treatment at the Maypen Hospital? Those hospitals, by the way, all fall under the Southern Regional Association, Southeast, that is. Now, as is the Mandeville Hospital, where a Nigerian man believed to have symptoms of the Ebola virus turned up. The man, who is a doctor himself, claimed that some nurses refused to treat him after he admitted visiting Nigeria in July and August this year. Michael Stewart is the chairman of the Southern Regional Health Authority, and he ordered a full report, laughingly adding, I quote, "We don't support patients not being treated in keeping with the guidelines set out by the Ministry of Health," end quote. He also says we've done a number, in fact, I'm saying this, we've done a number of shows featuring the inefficiencies and breaches in the health sector governed by the SRHA. Now, I humbly suggest that a full review of the authority should take place now, with the results made public as well as solutions to what clearly is a very sick problem. That's it for our program this evening. Thanks to you for watching as usual. Thanks to my guest Lisa Hanna, and thanks to our hard-working crew. I'm Simon Crossgill. Do join me tomorrow live at 7. Newswatch is next.